Breakfast time. How's breakfast, ladies?
Oh,
Good?
I know. Yeah,
Yeah, I tried that stuff too.
this one, was it any good?
Yeah, I
Like
don't know.
ricey or?
And I don't know, it's
Don't
mealy.
warn me, I'll just go. What's that? Oh, you got me convinced.
This is our fearless leader. This is our breakfast buffet. Look at all this good
Wow.
food.
Yeah, if you go hungry, it's your own fault.
Look at all this food.
Plenty of choices. Pretty
Plenty,
good, huh?
plenty of calories for today, yeah. Eggs,
See Richard's up.
bacon. I tell you what's the best, it's the bread. Got bread here. More people over here. This is our tour guide today, James. He's going to show us around Germany, Berlin. And here we are loading up the bus, ready for our tour of Berlin this morning.
Local expert whose name is James. And Good Morgen, James. 1, 2, 3. Good morning, James. Viel Spaß. Have fun all morning. Please be nice to all of us. If we lose the driver or local guide, you're stuck with me. And
Very impressive. So yeah, my name is James. I am going to be your local expert this morning. We are going to spend about 4 hours driving and wandering around some of the historic highlights at the center of Berlin. We're going to be focusing a lot, of course, on the Nazi era.
This is Museum Island. It's an island with a whole bunch of museums on it. Someone's even getting married out here.
And don't forget, James is the boss.
So yeah, I've had work. So the Prussians come in to this area in the 1500s, and they will build all of the stuff that we're looking at, and we'll talk about them in more detail. But by the 1800s, there is a starting sense in the area that will become Germany, which up until this point had
We got inflation too by American
Yeah,
America.
I'm not sure. It's
We're
quite
trying that same thing right now.
And to give you some context from the dollar, if you came here in 1919, $1 is worth about 4 marks. If you came back in November 1923, $1 is worth about 4 trillion marks.
Wow.
The
Okay,
Americans will actually step in.
That's quite that bad.
The Americans will step in 1924 with some loans. Papers over the cracks gives rise to the Roaring Twenties. Some of you might have seen the film Cabaret, set in Berlin during that time. But it ties the American economy very closely. The bowl was part of the original design. It was supposed to go inside the building. If you walk in there, you will see a beautiful round rotunda entranceway, and that was supposed to sit right in the middle. This bowl was a big deal when this building was built. It was made out of It's made out of one single piece of granite. It weighs about 90 tons. It came down the river on a processional barge. Everyone was like, "Ooh, look at this bowl!" But they couldn't fit it in through the columns. They didn't have the technology. When the communists come in after World War II, they're like, "We've got this. We can do this." So they try and get it up the steps. They drop it, and you can see there is a large crack on the bowl to this day from where the communists dropped it. You see those 2 marks there. This contains a lot of ancient artifacts. It's not my favorite. If 2,000-year-old Tupperware is your thing, then this is your museum.
There's the cracks where they dropped it.
It's not very Protestant. It gets a flat roof. For me, it's much more interesting because Adolf Hitler used to love to give speeches from the steps of this building. I've got a photograph of him doing exactly that. So the Nazis actually moved the bowl around the back of the building. They paved over the grass. They could fit 100,000 people on this square. It became known as Hitler's playground. Now, it takes place here during the last 2 weeks of World War II. Right, the battle for Berlin was bloody, it was massive. Stalin amasses an army of 2.5 million to take the city, and about 500,000 are left to defend it. You will see also squares and rectangles. I'm just going to stand over here on the columns of the Berlin Cathedral. The Berlin Cathedral I like to think of as sort of a cathedral in hiding almost, because it looks old and Catholic. It's actually a 20th century Protestant church. Prussia was Protestant, right?
So this is where Hitler stood, right here, where I'm going to stand right now. And he would look out over the hundreds of thousands of people here, dictating to them. This is incredible, standing here where Hitler stood. These are bullet holes right here.
Yeah. All machine gun fire.
Wow. Look at that. They're all cute guys. That is crazy.
In the sidewalk where they obviously threw the coin out of the window and it hit against the ground. Now the case went completely cold for a couple of years. One of the only clues they had was that CCTV footage that day showed someone walking around nearby with a very rare vintage Armani jacket, like really unusual jacket. It was worth about $20,000. And a couple of years later, in the closets of a member of one of Berlin's leading crime families, they found this jacket. It allowed them to reopen the case. They never found the coin, but they seized dozens and dozens of properties that they believed had been purchased with the sale of the melted down coin. And 3 men are currently serving lengthy prison sentences for the crime. Yeah, so you know, if you ever plan a heist, maybe don't wear your vintage Armani, is my takeaway from this story. Sorry. Napoleon invades 11 years later. She will be dragged back to Paris, and she will sit outside the Louvre, the famous Parisian museum, for 11 years. So what did the Prussians do when they finally helped defeat Napoleon?
Walking under the arch. Gate. Something. Pretty awesome.
A photograph was taken marking the end of the Second World War. This is of a Soviet soldier lifting a flag on the roof of the Reichstag building.
Very cool.
Fighting for the building was fierce.
Right up there.
About 3,000 Soviets will die trying to take this building. Stones that you see right here marks where the Berlin Wall used to run. So I'm in the west, you guys are in the east.
Look at that. East and West Berlin. This is where the wall was. Pretty awesome. What they're doing over there, no one can give me an answer. There's huge building works. We think it's an extension of the underground, which is just on the other side. But yeah, the parliament was built in the 1890s. It was built under the Prussian era. The king was in charge, of course, back then. So the parliament has no real power. It becomes a lot more important during the Weimar era, of course, because the Weimar, each slate has the name, the party that this person belonged to, the camp that they ended up in, and the year that they died in. Mostly these people were from the Communist Party or the Socialist Party. This is a good moment just to clarify. I know some people argue that the Nazis were actually socialists. I know they have socialists in their name. They were not socialists. There was a socialist wing to the Nazi Party. It is eliminated in 1934. That is not to say that people on the left can't be authoritarian, right? Like Stalin was clearly on the left. But in this case, the Nazis, the way they ran their economy, they were all about private business. Even though you had to collaborate with the government, they were not left. So most of these Hotel Adlon, it's like the Ritz-Carlton of Germany. World leaders will come here. Justin Bieber will come here. But most famously, Michael Jackson once dangled his baby out of the window of one of these buildings. But we were starting to realise there's something not right with that guy. Only a couple of months before the wall comes down, and it was an attempted hot air balloon escape. The hot air balloon did not fill up enough
husband and wife, they start hearing sirens coming towards them. The wife tells the husband, you go, because you know how to drive this thing. It doesn't have enough air in it to take both of us. He gets into the West, but it crash lands and he will die in a West German hospital. Very, very tragic. Just a few months after the wall will come down. We'll see Checkpoint Charlie come into view in just a couple of blocks. This was the Golden Mile back in the 1920s. This area, this very progressive, sort of sexually free part of Berlin that the film Cabaret is based off of. This was based on this street. It is now a kind of contains offices and it's a shopping district. The hut looks quite small. That was just the American end of the checkpoint. This whole area that we're driving down now is Checkpoint Charlie, and just behind it is the famous Berlin, the Mauer Museum, the Wall Museum at Checkpoint Charlie. It's really interesting. Some people really like it, some people don't like it so much. It's very eccentric, it's very cluttered, but it's really fascinating. So this is a real recommendation if you're interested in more Cold War history. We're gonna get out and I will give you guys a time to meet back after our break. Really good outdoor seating is at Coffee Fellows. You can use the restrooms for free if you're buying stuff there, otherwise you have to pay 50 cents. Sound good? Mm-hmm.
10:45.
10:45.
This corner. This corner.
Well, here's Checkpoint Charlie. There's not much in here.
U.S. President John F. Kennedy.
Got a German soldier checking up on us. Here's Checkpoint Charlie. What are they called?
Shelby.
Oh, never heard of them.
You usually waited for to get your hands on one of these cars. You would need to put your name on a waiting list that could be as long as 18 years. Oh, yeah. Wow. So what would normally happen is if you had a kid, when that kid is born, you put their name down on a waiting list, and when they are of driving age is when you can get your hands on a car. And cut themselves to help get themselves over the wall. When those rounded tops were clean, it made for an incredibly difficult barrier because you couldn't grip your hand, right? So they actually realized that that rounded top was harder to get over than barbed wire. This, of course, is not what happens in 1961, right? In 1961, it's just a barbed wire fence. It is built up in a kind of patchwork way for the next 10 years or so. And then in the early 70s, they decide to fully sort of militarize it. And it's by the mid-70s that you get this fully militarized concrete border wall. We are in the West. To get to where we are right now, you don't just have to get over the wall, you have to get across the width of a road. It could be as wide as about 70 meters. There's no hope of escape, right? Hope will eventually come in the shape of Mikhail Gorbachev, who comes to power in the Soviet Union in 1985. He is a reformist. Part of his reforms will have the Soviet Union stopping their micromanagement of all of the Eastern Bloc countries of the government. Now, crucially, Gunter Schabowski does not go to the meeting that morning when the policy is signed into law. He actually does not understand the law. He will walk into the press conference, someone will hand him a pile of documents, and he'll just read from them word for word. And it's a very boring press conference, like deliberately so. There's all of this random talk about farming quotas, stuff that has nothing to do with the wall. They're trying to make it as unnewsworthy as possible. At the end of the press conference, he opens up the floor to questions, and he is asked a very simple question, and that is, when does this law come into effect? Now, Gunter Schabowski does not know the answer to this question, and he starts to panic. And in a moment of panic, he reads the date at the top of the press release, which is of course that day's date. Yeah. So, I believe effective immediately is what he says. This was not true. It's supposed to open in 2 weeks to give the government time to prepare. East Germans can listen to Western radio, watch Western television by this time. They start going to all the checkpoints, demanding they be allowed into the West. In the north, you have a checkpoint manned by a Stasi officer called Harold Jäger. And he does not know what to do. He's got a crowd of thousands, it's growing, the government is in a state of meltdown at this point, he's getting no orders. Eventually he gets an instruction, and that is to take the troublemakers out of the crowd, invalidate their East German passports, and banish them into the West, which he does. But to the crowd, this just looks like people are now being allowed through the checkpoint. So now you have a rush on the border in a very dangerous situation. You've got armed guards standing almost this close with an increasingly agitated crowd. At this point, Harold Jagen has three bad options, right? One, he does nothing, and his men could be trampled and killed. Two, he orders them to shoot, and he's responsible for the deaths of hundreds of innocent people. Three, he disobeys his orders, and he opens up the checkpoint. And at 11:30 on the 9th of November 1989, Harold Jagen chooses option 3, and within half an hour, all 8 of the inner city checkpoints are open. It's done. Genie's out of the bottle. It's over. West Berliners are welcoming East Berliners over the wall. Families are reunited. People are hugging, crying, celebrating. The West Berlin Bank offers every East Berliner 200 Deutschmarks, which was a small fortune back then. It's been famously said that walking from East Berlin into West Berlin in 1989 is like walking from black and white television into color. But it was actually the humble banana that was the first thing to go out of stock because they were very hard to come by in the East. And within a week, West Berlin supermarkets are having to put up signs saying you are only allowed to buy enough for one family to eat for a week. Because East Germans had this scarcity mindset, right? So they were going into these abundant supermarkets and just stocking up like it was the apocalypse.
Toilet paper, COVID.
It was a toilet paper COVID type situation.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I've got more stories to tell you about this period, but in order for us to get as much into this time as possible, I'm going to tell some of those when we're back on the coast.
Here's the wall, or what's left of it. An amazing story. What that guy just told us sends you shivers because of the fact that these families that had been separated for 30-something years were able to be reunited again. Amazing.
Able to sell for the last 10 years back out of storage in the hopes that the East Berliners wouldn't know any better and would buy it, right? Because the East Berliners had completely missed out on half a century of brand development and technology development. But apparently the East Berliners, or the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe, as it's actually called, it opens in 2005 to mark the 60th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. And it was quite controversial when it opened up. Like, a lot of people loved it, some people did not. Some people found it too abstract. If you didn't know what it was, you might not necessarily know. There is an international design competition to come up with this design. Some of the ideas were a bit wacky stories, all of those experiences and all of those memories to be welcome in one space, unless it is an abstraction. Now, as a counterpoint to the memorial is the information center downstairs. Wasn't that different, right? They had electric lights in their houses, they had gas stoves, they sat on couches, hung out in living rooms. I mean, they lived in apartment blocks and houses. They were modern people.
This is the Holocaust Memorial. All different shapes and sizes. Interesting.
We don't think that this number of blocks has any relationship to anything in Jewish history, and people have pored over Jewish history to try and find a correlation. Some people have said it correlates with the number of pages in the original Talmud, the original Jewish religious text of the area that used to house all of the Nazi ministries and headquarters. We're sort of back, well, we're pretty close still to where the Gestapo headquarters was, right? That was like 7 blocks that way. And in between us and the Gestapo headquarters, you have the propaganda ministry, you have the Air Force. The largest building in this area was where this housing block is now, Hitler's palace. So that is where this housing block, it was where this housing block is now. We are standing on what was the gardens of the palace, German government. after reunification, there was a huge amount of discussion and argument about what to do with this site. Some people thought they should excavate, some people thought and make a museum, some people thought they should create a museum, build a random building. They were very worried about creating a point of pilgrimage for neo-Nazis. Hands are shaking, dragging the left side of his body. He's on a huge quantity of narcotics that his doctor has been giving him for the last number of years. A lot of top Nazis were on loads of drugs. Eucadol, which is an opiate in the heroin family of drugs, cocaine, methamphetamines, which were invented in Germany in 1938. It's another thing we have to thank the Nazis for. And he's lost touch with reality, basically. He thinks that Germany still has a chance of turning a corner and winning the war. The Allies knew that he will have a meeting in the bunker with his generals who will tell him it's over. Very soon heavy artillery will be showering down from the Soviets. He goes mad, starts blaming the German army, blaming the people. It's the first time we hear any talk of suicide. He says, I'd rather kill myself than give myself over to the Soviets. We believe this marriage was a thank you to Eva for keeping herself so hidden from German society. You often see this with authoritarian rulers and dictators. They want to project that their true love is between themselves and the people, or themselves and the country, right? So their romantic partners, they'll be kept in the background. Men who were going for one-on-one private meetings with Adolf Hitler every week at the palace had no idea that this woman existed. That is how secret she was kept. The day after, they walk down a corridor in the bunker, shaking hands with compatriots. They walk into his office. There's one gunshot, as we believe Eva Braun gives herself cyanide. Then upon instructions, their bodies are wrapped up, brought up to ground level, and burnt repeatedly until there is very little left of them. Now, within 2 days of this happening, Soviets are already over at the Reichstag, which is about 600 meters in that direction. They know the bunker's here. They want to get here as quickly as possible, either to capture Hitler or find evidence of his death or of his escape.
So this is where the Hitler's bunker was, underneath this parking lot. They destroyed it and covered it up, and they got rid of all the buildings around here, built apartments, and this is a nothing. And somewhere over here was where Hitler's body was burnt with his wife, girlfriend, after they committed suicide. Here's Martin Luther. We're walking through some place here now, heading back to a clock. And here comes the tail draggers back here. Dragging it. Here we go. Scooting down the road. I'm the only one that didn't get one yet. This thing's got some issues. But I'm getting there. I caught up to him. Well, in Berlin they don't have TJ Maxx. They have TK Maxx. Interesting.
The adult costs are 21. 17 and 21. I said to you overall that it's around about 20, and it is. But because the price difference is quite significant, the group reason I said, yeah, to keep it exactly as it is, because sometimes the family's paying anyway or whatever. Listen, there's no rush. Never have me cash in the street. I can't do it like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Marx and Engels. All these monuments were melted down, destroyed, broken, everywhere else in communist Europe. But in Berlin, things kind of limped on, and there were so many, and certain of them had got historical relevance, even in a good or bad way, the same as other Nazi sites have survived. So Marx and Engels survived, and a girl stopped me and said, oh, what are you going to say about them? I might come and I might be interested. And all I said was, all I wanted to say about Marx and Engels was they were keen on finding many, many problems to do with the working poor. And for me as a Brit, it's interesting that they did that in London and in Manchester. Their studies of economics are from Britain, from the UK. And Karl Marx, of course, is buried in London. as for whether they had any interesting or worthwhile solutions, the jury obviously has taken a while, but on the whole found the solutions to be lacking in some way.
Two very interesting, evil men, I would say. Well, they come up with crazy ideas.
And I'm going to cook them all today and go through it, but everybody
Right,
else.
here we are for supper, folks. At some restaurant, we're going to have duck. I'm sure this building is something significant. Here we are at supper. We haven't got our supper yet, but we're going to start here soon. Everybody's just kind of visiting. And this is where it really happens here at this table. Yeah.
Serious.
While drinking water.
Yeah, water. We all getting charged for it.
Yep. It's a video.
Oh, it's on. Let me post this video.
How was your duck?
So good.
You actually ate it, Denise? I'm surprised.
So good.
You should eat your beetroot, this red stuff.
I tried it. It wasn't my fave.
Oh, wow.
It was so good.
No. I'm scared.
Well, we just got done eating here at the Talchin Subby. We're back in there, and we're going to head out here, this whole group. We're going to head to that tower there now. We're going to go up there and take a look at the city of Berlin. Should be fun. These are the big chickens that are not going in the tower. They're too scared to go up there.
Latest by 7 o'clock. Don't bring luggage down and abandon it in the lobby. Even if you bring the luggage down to the breakfast area, we are imagining, expecting that you will come down at 10 o'clock or around 10 o'clock. Officially, they put that as a designated departure time.
We're about to go up this tower. We got to go through security over here. Let's see how that goes.
Oh my word. Guys, I just realized how high we're going.
Are you not? Are you on one leg or not?
Yes, now I am.
Hey, don't on one leg.
Guys, your eardrums are popping.
Oh, it's not bad actually. This is communism in action. It takes you very fast to somewhere you didn't know you wanted to go. That's communism.
Oh, it's slowing down.
Well, here is Berlin from the observation deck. Pretty cool. There's a hotel with that red sign on there. We're at the bottom of the tower now. There it is. This is the Lego display. It's actually really cool.
The river.
There's the tower, and then you come over here. Checkpoint Charlie is right down there. That's where Checkpoint Charlie is. We went to this museum today. This one here. That's pretty neat.
Wow. Did you find Bradenton Bay? Yes.
Where we are.
This is where we are right now.
Dome is right there.